Racist cops arrest black man. Their faces drop when they learn he's the police chief. On a sweltering summer night in Philadelphia, newly appointed police chief Xavier Cole sets out alone, dressed in plain clothes, determined to gather intel on a rumored gun smuggling ring. He doesn't want official backup. He wants to observe quietly, without tipping off criminals or corrupt insiders. But fate has a cruel twist in store. Two patrol officers, already infamous in certain neighborhoods for their racially charged tactics, spot him. They assume he's just another black man lingering where he shouldn't. Their stop becomes an arrest. Powerless in that charged moment, Cole braces for humiliation. Little do these officers know they've just handcuffed their own boss. Philadelphia's skyline, punctuated by the spire of City Hall, glowed orange at dusk. The city was no stranger to turmoil. Waves of protests had rocked the streets over the past year, demanding transparency in law enforcement. Against this backdrop stepped Xavier Cole, freshly arrived from Detroit, carrying a reputation for innovative community policing. If there was a police leader who could mend fences, the mayor believed it was him. Cole was in his early 40s, tall with broad shoulders, a calm presence, and watchful eyes. His track record in Detroit had been impressive. He'd lowered violent crime rates through programs that involved citizens and local businesses in shaping public safety. Media outlets like the Philadelphia Inquirer lauded him as the fresh perspective we've been waiting for. But stepping into the Philadelphia Police Department proved challenging from day one. Many officers were hesitant about an outsider taking the top spot. Some quietly grumbled that a big city transplant would never understand Philly's tight-knit neighborhoods. Cole, though, took each day in stride. He moved through precincts, introduced himself at roll calls, and greeted staff in the hallways. He insisted on being present at community events, shaking hands at block parties in West Philly, visiting the famed Reading Terminal Market to hear from local vendors, and speaking at youth gatherings near Temple University. Almost immediately, Cole faced grim reminders that the department had a complicated relationship with minority communities. Complaints of racial profiling and excessive force were commonplace in certain districts. He promised to address them head-on, establishing new oversight measures, encouraging officers to attend cultural sensitivity sessions, and investigating old complaints that had been shelved for years. Still, there were corners of the force resistant to this new wave of accountability. Rumors floated that certain officers engaged in questionable activities, harassment, violence, or worse, believing the blue wall would protect them. Cole intended to prove them wrong. 1 week into the job, a tip trickled in about a large-scale arms shipment expected to land at the old industrial docks along the Delaware River. The intel came from a local resident who'd grown to trust Cole through a mutual contact. Instead of mobilizing a major task force, Cole decided to do a quiet reconnaissance first. If the tip checked out, he'd bring in the necessary backup. He just needed to see the lay of the land without scaring off the suspects. That decision led him to pull on a plain hoodie, slip a baseball cap over his short-cropped hair, and drive his own sedan into a dark, deserted area. He never guessed that 2 of his own patrol officers, men he was supposed to lead, would decide. He was a criminal by appearance alone. At 11:30, the waterfront in South Philadelphia was mostly silent. Old warehouses and shipping containers loomed like silent giants, relics of a busier time when manufacturing boomed. Cole guided his sedan past no trespassing signs, searching for any sign of illicit activity. A single street lamp flickered, casting a weak glow on the cracked pavement. He parked near a row of dilapidated loading docks. The tipster, known only as Marcus, had described an organized ring bringing in assault rifles destined for city streets. Marcus claimed he'd seen men carrying large crates from unmarked trucks into abandoned buildings. Cole's instincts told him to verify carefully. If this ring was real, it could feed illegal weapons into neighborhoods already struggling with violence. As he stepped out of the car, the humid air pressed close, making his shirt cling to his back. He double-checked his phone, ensuring it was set to vibrate. He considered calling his new deputy commissioner, Janice Redmond, for backup. But one glance at the desolate docks reminded him that sometimes a big police presence would tip off criminals. He needed stealth. "I'll just take a quick look," he murmured to himself. "Then I'll alert the precinct if I see anything substantial." He locked his sedan and slipped between two rusted cargo containers. Wind rattled the chain-link fencing. A rat scurried away, darting past a mound of broken wood pallets. He spotted a faint light in the distance, coming from a warehouse whose windows were painted black. His heart pounded, a mix of apprehension and determination. This was the job, after all, to protect Philadelphia from the inside out. Just as he crossed a set of railroad tracks, footsteps crunched behind him. Cole froze. Possibly just a stray cat or a homeless person seeking refuge. But a moment later, he saw them, two uniformed officers shining flashlights along the ground, scanning the area. Cole recognized the general style of the uniforms, even in the dim. "Philly PD, my guys," he thought. Ordinarily, he'd step forward, show his badge, and identify himself as the chief. But he'd left his official badge at home, ironically to keep a low profile. He only had a smaller ID tucked into his pocket, and in this darkness, it might not register quickly. Crouching behind a rusted barrel, he contemplated how best to approach. Before he could decide, the officers separated, their flashlights slicing through the gloom. One of them, a tall, thick-set man, noticed the reflection of Cole's sedan. The other, a wiry blonde officer, inched closer to Cole's hiding spot. Cole's mind raced. "I could announce myself," he thought, "but if they're jumpy, that might backfire." Instead, he stood up slowly, hands visible at his sides, intending to calmly greet them. Unfortunately, that first impression was overshadowed by the immediate suspicion in the officer's eyes. "Hey, hands where I can see them," barked the tall officer, shining the flashlight directly into Cole's face. The man's nameplate read Donovan. From this close, Cole could see the tension in Donovan's jaw, the rigid stance that suggested he was ready to escalate. The wiry officer, nameplate Rourke, flanked Cole from the side, flashlight bobbing. "What are you doing back here, pal? This area's off limits." Cole raised his hands slightly, palms outward. "Easy, officers," he said in a measured tone. Turn around," Donovan snapped. "I asked you a question." Cole fought the urge to flash a badge, but he also felt a surge of indignation. They were addressing him like a wanted felon, not just a civilian they'd encountered. Still, Cole knew that any sign of defiance could set them off. "I'm checking something out. I'm not trespassing with bad intent. I can explain. Is that right?" Rourke said, circling closer. "Look at that car, Don. Not a scratch on it. Probably stolen or some chop shop special." "Car's registered to me," Cole answered calmly. "Yeah?" Donovan sneered. "You got ID to prove that?" Cole nodded. "In my front pocket. Let me reach for it." But Donovan lunged forward, flipping Cole around and shoving him against the side of the shipping container. The metal surface, spotted with rust, scraped Cole's forearms. He felt his heart pound. This was way out of line for a routine check. "Hey, take it easy," he managed, wincing. Rourke patted Cole's pockets, rummaging for a wallet. "He's got something here," he muttered. He extracted a slender card holder, then rifled through it. Just a driver's license with the name Xavier Cole. Donovan peered over. "Never heard of him. Likely a fake name. We've had break-ins around here. Bet he's dealing or scoping for something." Cole sensed the moment spiraling out of control. The mention of break-ins was reminiscent of the tip he was following. "They suspect me of that?" he thought, exasperated. He tried to speak up. "Officers, if you'll just check your system, you'll—" But Donovan jerked Cole's arm behind his back, causing a flash of pain. "You can talk at the station. Right now, you're detained. Resisting is only going to make it worse." Cole was no stranger to these scenarios. He'd studied thousands of arrest protocols. None of them condoned manhandling a suspect who posed no threat. A swirl of anger and fear gripped him. If they're like this with me, how are they treating everyday citizens? Despite everything, Cole kept his voice steady, leaning back enough to meet Donovan's glare. "I suggest you call in my name before you do anything else. You'll regret it otherwise." That earned him a harsh snort from Donovan. Threatening an officer? Big mistake. He yanked Cole's wrists together, snapping on handcuffs with punishing tightness. Meanwhile, Rourke radioed in, giving dispatch a vague story about a suspicious individual resisting. Neither officer seemed to realize the magnitude of their error. But soon they would once they learned exactly who they had in custody. Within minutes, Cole found himself in the back seat of the patrol car, the metal divider looming just inches from his knees. The seat was hard plastic, designed for easy cleaning, and every bump in the road jostled his cuffed hands behind him. He could feel the sting where Donovan's manhandling had left bruises. Outside, Donovan argued softly with Rourke, their silhouettes illuminated by the car's headlights against a backdrop of graffiti and rusting fences. Though Cole couldn't catch every word, he heard Rourke mutter something about, "Couldn't we just check his ID?" And Donovan responding, "He's lying. People lie all the time." The tension in their voices suggested a difference of opinion, but Donovan's aggression seemed to dominate. Cole inhaled, trying to center himself. As chief, he'd given countless talks about proper arrest protocol. He believed in the motto that respect went both ways. Now, ironically, he was on the receiving end of an absolute disregard for that principle. A flicker of anger sparked. "If they do this to me, imagine how they treat the average citizen." He resolved not to lose his composure. There would be a time to reveal his identity clearly and hold them accountable. Soon, the driver's door opened and Donovan slid behind the wheel. Rourke took the passenger seat. They pulled away from the docks, the cruiser's engine echoing in the quiet industrial zone. Donovan glanced back through the metal grate, eyes cold. "Name again?" Cole sighed. "Xavier Cole." Donovan relayed it to dispatch half-heartedly. Cole heard the crackle of the radio, followed by a pause. Then dispatch asked for more details. Donovan provided Cole's driver's license number. Another pause. Something in the dispatcher's voice changed. She repeated the name, "Xavier Cole," as if double-checking. Cole felt a surge of hope. Maybe she recognized it. Philadelphia Inquirer had done a front-page story on him just a week ago, and internal department bulletins had circulated his photo. This might be the moment Donovan realized his error, but Donovan tensed. "Yes, that's the name. Why?" The dispatch response was muffled. He turned to Rourke, whispering something. Rourke's eyes darted to the rearview mirror. For a second, Cole almost expected them to release him right there. But Donovan set his jaw. "We're taking him to the station anyway," he growled into the mic. "Maybe the ID system's glitching." Cole couldn't believe it. They were actively ignoring the dispatcher's hints. It was as though Donovan refused to consider that the man in handcuffs might actually be the new chief. Rain started pattering against the windshield, reflecting the swirling red and blue lights. As the cruiser picked up speed, Cole felt a swirl of frustration and an odd pang of sadness. This entire fiasco was an extreme example of everything he'd pledged to fix. The uniform, the badge, these were meant to represent service, not tyranny. Yet in this moment, the uniform was a symbol of intimidation turned against him. He shut his eyes briefly, letting the jostling of the ride remind him to breathe. Soon, he told himself, they'll realize. And that's when the real reckoning will begin. The cruiser rolled into a small precinct station on the outskirts of South Philly, an older, less frequented facility with a sagging fence and outdated signage. The building's harsh fluorescent lights spilled onto cracked pavement. Donovan parked near a side entrance, evidently bypassing the main lobby to avoid onlookers. He and Rourke got out, walked around, and yanked open the back door. Rain spattered the asphalt. Cole stepped out with as much dignity as possible, wrists still cuffed behind him. The drizzle dampened his sweatshirt, intensifying the late summer heat into a muggy discomfort. Inside, the corridor was narrow, its walls scuffed and in need of fresh paint. A single overhead fixture flickered ominously. At the far end of the hall, a desk officer looked up from his phone as they approached. His name badge read Reyes. He looked from Cole to Donovan, eyebrows raised. Another suspect? Donovan nodded. Caught him lurking near the docks. Gave a BS story about checking on something. ID says Xavier Cole, but I think it's fake. Reyes frowned. Wait, that name. Are you sure? Rourke, shifting uncomfortably, interjected, yeah, that's what the ID says. The system was glitching or something. We're just booking him until we sort it out. Reyes studied Cole for a moment, almost like he recognized something. But Donovan shot him a glare, daring him to argue. The desk officer coughed. Fine. But you guys handle the paperwork. I'm busy. He returned to his phone, though a flicker of doubt lingered on his face. Donovan led Cole down a short flight of steps to a holding area, 3 small cells, all empty tonight. The overhead lights buzzed. With a grunt, Donovan spun Cole around, uncuffed him, then shoved him roughly into the cell. Cole stumbled, catching himself on a metal bench. Rourke lingered outside the bars, looking uneasy. You can't do this, Cole said, breathing heavily. At least let me make a call. That's basic procedure. You'll get a call when we're done booking, Donovan replied curtly, slamming the cell door. The clang echoed. Right now you sit tight. Cole's mind churned. He was sorely tempted to shout, I'm the police chief you idiots call Deputy Commissioner Redmond, or the mayor, or anyone. But a part of him wanted them to cement their wrongdoing, to see how far they'd go. He needed full proof of their misconduct. Across the hallway, Rourke leaned closer to Donovan. Cole caught snippets of their hushed exchange. We might be making a mistake, Rourke whispered. The system glitch. That's not normal. And Reyes seemed to know something. Donovan dismissed the concern. Reyes is a rookie on desk duty. Don't sweat it. We'll do a thorough check. If this clown is the real Xavier Cole, why is he skulking around the docks with no backup? Makes no sense. I'll fill out the forms, then we'll see. Cole sank onto the bench, rotating his sore wrists. They're doubling down, he thought. He had to wonder how many others had Donovan and Rourke treated like this, cynically ignoring the possibility of innocence. The question fueled his resolve. This ends tonight, he told himself. Officer Rourke paced outside the cell, arms crossed. He kept casting glances at Cole, who sat calmly on the bench. The longer Rourke stared, the more uncertain he appeared. Finally, he took a hesitant step toward the bars. Look, Rourke began, keeping his voice low so Donovan wouldn't overhear. If there's something you need me to know, now might be the time. Donovan's gone to fill out some official booking forms. Once they're finalized, it gets a lot harder to walk this back. Cole didn't rise from the bench. He regarded Rourke with a level gaze. Why not check with the main precinct? Or, better yet, log into your internal email and see the bulletins about the new chief. You'll see my photo, my name, everything. Rourke swallowed, a flicker of alarm crossing his face. The chief's name is Cole, but... He stopped, licking his lips. Listen, we've never seen you in uniform. My partner's convinced you're scamming us. But if you're actually him, why wouldn't you just show your official badge? Cole exhaled. Because I was doing a private recon. I left the official stuff behind. I also didn't expect to be jumped by my own men. Rourke shifted, glancing at the corridor. Donovan thinks we can't trust the departmental bulletins right now. He claims you might have forged them if you're part of a bigger gang. I know that sounds paranoid, he added, flushing. But that's where we're at. A humorless laugh escaped Cole. And you? You believe I'm forging departmental bulletins? Rourke's gaze fell. I'm not sure. The way you speak, you don't sound like a random suspect. But Donovan's been on the force longer. He says you fit the profile of a trespasser or a drug runner. He's, had certain opinions about the neighborhoods in South Philly. Cole picked up on the euphemism. Opinions about race, you mean? I guess that's no surprise. A flicker of discomfort crossed Rourke's face, and he didn't deny it. I've told him to tone it down sometimes, but he says he knows how to doral policing. Look, I'm not perfect, but I can see something's off here. Cole leaned forward. If you're not sure, then do the right thing. Call your watch commander. Tell them you have someone claiming to be the new chief of police in custody. That should solve this instantly. Rourke hesitated, glancing at the hallway again. I can't go over Donovan's head without proof. He's senior, and that's a big leap. If I'm wrong, it'll blow back on me. A hint of fear tinged his voice. Cole nodded slowly, recognizing Rourke's dilemma. The culture of some precincts made younger officers intimidated by veterans, especially if those vets had a reputation for aggression. So you'd rather stand by while a possible chief is sitting in a cell? Cole asked quietly. Think about that. Rourke's jaw tightened. Give me a minute, he finally said, turning on his heel and briskly walking away. Left alone, Cole felt a twinge of cautious optimism. Maybe, just maybe, Rourke would find the courage to confirm his identity and end this charade. But the clock was ticking, and Donovan seemed determined to push the booking forward. With every passing minute, Cole knew his humiliating ordeal was becoming more official, and that the fallout for Donovan and Rourke would only escalate once the truth emerged. 5 more tense minutes elapsed. Cole stood near the cell door, listening for any sign that Rourke was making that crucial call. Instead, he heard Donovan's voice echo in the corridor, accompanied by angry footsteps. Cole returned to the bench, bracing for whatever came next. Suddenly, the hallway light flickered as Donovan stormed in, brandishing a printed page in his hand. Rourke trailed behind, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. "You see this?" Donovan said, shaking the paper so roughly it rattled. "I ran your info, found a driver's license in the system for Xavier Cole. Yes, it even links to an address in Philadelphia. But guess what else? We have a note from dispatch that says you might be the new chief of police. Ridiculous. You think forging system entries is going to trick me?" Cole's eyebrows shot up. "Why would I go to the trouble of forging an entire departmental hire record?" he countered, controlling the anger in his voice. Donovan ground his teeth. "I don't know. Some elaborate scheme. Maybe you got contacts on the inside. But guess what my buddy in the 8th precinct said? The new chief is older, bigger. You don't match the description he heard." He slammed the paper onto a nearby desk. "So I'm calling your bluff." Cole felt a headache brewing behind his temples. He realized rumors about him might be inaccurate. Some might have said he was older, or maybe that he was heavier or wore glasses. Misinformation traveled fast in big departments. "Maybe your buddy never bothered looking at my official photo," Cole said icily. "That's enough," Donovan snapped, pointing a finger. "You keep talking like you're some big shot. Let me tell you how this is going to go. We'll get your fingerprints. Then we'll have digital records. If there's a mismatch, you're done." Rourke cleared his throat, stepping forward. "Don, let's slow down. If there's even a chance, Donovan whirled on him. A chance of what? That this guy's our boss? He chuckled harshly. Get real. At that moment, the desk officer, Reyes, poked his head into the holding area. Donovan? We got a call from Central Command. They want a status on the suspect claiming to be Chief Cole. The Deputy Commissioner herself is asking about him. That announcement hung in the air like thunder. Donovan's face paled, the bravado draining. For a beat, no one spoke. Cole stood, arms folded. Sounds like the brass is aware. Maybe you should go ahead and talk to them. The flicker of fear in Donovan's eyes was unmistakable now. Yet he clung to denial, barking at Reyes. Stall them. Tell them we're verifying ID. Reyes nodded and retreated, clearly uncomfortable. Donovan let out a shaky breath, turning to Rourke. Fine. We'll do Prince quickly. If the system says he's not the chief, we're good. If it says he is, well, we'll see. He shot Cole a venomous look. But if you're lying, you'll regret it. Cole stared back, unwavering. We'll see who regrets what. The dread that flickered across Donovan's face told Cole that the officer was starting to realize how badly he'd mishandled the situation. Their next steps would either confirm the truth or plunge them deeper into a career-ending scandal. Donovan led Cole to a small room crammed with outdated fingerprint scanning equipment. Fluorescent tubes cast a harsh glare on the battered linoleum floor. Rourke hovered near the doorway, arms crossed, still looking deeply unsettled. "Put your hand on the scanner," Donovan ordered, flicking the switch on a bulky machine. He tapped at a keyboard, opening the departmental fingerprint database. Usually, such a station was used for processing suspects. Rarely did an actual police chief stand in front of it. The irony was impossible to ignore. Cole placed his hand flat, the bright sensor scanning his prints. He felt a wave of grim satisfaction. They're about to see the biggest mistake of their careers. Still, the humiliating feeling of being processed like a criminal gnawed at him. Once the scan completed, the machine beeped. Donovan typed a command, pulling up a window. A progress bar flickered on the ancient computer monitor. "It might take a minute," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Rourke coughed. "Don, maybe we should just shut it," Donovan snapped, not even letting him finish. He was probably aware that once Rourke made the call to Deputy Commissioner Redmond, the truth would come crashing down. Donovan seemed determined to confirm it for himself, as if clinging to the final shred of hope that he was correct. But each second that passed made it more likely he was not. Cole stood calmly, arms folded again. He noticed Rourke's gaze flicking between the screen and Cole's face, as though measuring the tension. Donovan's posture was rigid, lips pressed thin. In the background, the hum of air conditioning provided a constant, droning note of anticipation. Suddenly, a beep indicated the query finished. Donovan's eyes scanned the result. Match Xavier Cole, Chief of Police, Philadelphia PD. Additional data scrolled across the screen, including Cole's official photo, date of hire, and clearance level. It was all there, undeniable. Donovan's mouth fell open. The color drained from his face. He stared at the monitor as if it were a nightmare from which he couldn't wake. Rourke leaned closer, reading the lines. "Oh my God," he breathed, stepping back. Cole waited a moment, letting the weight of realization sink in. Then he said softly, "Satisfied?" Donovan turned, eyes wide with panic, stammering, I, how why didn't you say?" "I tried," Cole snapped, frustration brimming. "Several times. And your colleague suggested double-checking the name earlier. You insisted I was lying. This is on you." Rourke took a step forward, hands up in an apologetic gesture. "Chief, I'm so sorry. We didn't realize." Clearly, Cole's voice was icily controlled. "Now, we're going to rectify this immediately." Donovan's gaze skittered around the room, as if searching for a solution. Chief, sir, it was a misunderstanding. We had reason to suspect. Stop, Cole cut him off. He was done listening to flimsy justifications. You detained me without probable cause, used force, ignored my requests to call your superiors. That's not a misunderstanding. That's misconduct. In that moment, the reality of their actions crashed down on Donovan and Rourke. The scanning machine continued whirring, spitting out a paper record. But the intangible verdict was already in. They had racially profiled and manhandled their own chief. The city was about to learn just how deeply prejudice could run, even within the force sworn to protect and serve. Deputy Commissioner Janice Redmond arrived at the small precinct station less than an hour later, her face etched with anger. She strode into the dingy hallway, flanked by two internal affairs investigators. Donovan and Rourke stood near a water cooler, glancing up like cornered animals. Their typical swagger had vanished. Redmond didn't even acknowledge them at first. She marched straight to the holding area, where Cole was now waiting uncuffed, but still bearing the bruises of the night's ordeal. "Chief Cole," she said quietly, bowing her head, "I'm so sorry. Are you all right?" Cole nodded, though the tension in his jaw spoke volumes. "I'll live. Thank you for coming." Redmond's gaze flicked to Donovan and Rourke, who hovered in the background. "We got your call, and then an urgent dispatch notification that an arrest had been made. Nobody realized it was you until the system flagged your prints. I've brought IA to investigate immediately." From behind her, one of the investigators stepped forward, addressing Cole respectfully. "Chief, we'll need a statement from you as soon as possible, and from the officers involved." Cole gestured stiffly to the door that led to the front desk area. "I'm ready when you are. Let's handle this now." Redmond signaled to Donovan and Rourke with a sharp wave of her hand. "Inside the briefing room, both of you. Now." They trudged forward, shoulders slumped. Donovan's cheeks were flushed, sweat beading at his temples. In the briefing room, a battered table and a row of plastic chairs awaited them. The internal affairs investigators set up a recorder. Cole and Redmond sat across from Donovan and Rourke. The tension was palpable, like a storm cloud about to burst. IA investigator Marsha Benson started the questioning. "Officer Donovan, Officer Rourke, do you understand that you are under formal investigation for potential misconduct, including unlawful arrest and use of excessive force?" Donovan's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." Rourke nodded silently, eyes downcast. Benson continued, "Please explain the circumstances leading to Chief Cole's arrest tonight." Donovan launched into a shaky explanation about suspicious behavior near the docks, break-ins in the area, and how Cole allegedly refused to provide clarifying information. Rourke occasionally chimed in, less confident, but supportive of Donovan's story. They used words like possible burglary suspect and resisting instructions, which made Cole's stomach churn at the outright distortion. When it was Cole's turn, he recounted every detail: the initial contact, the refusal to check his identity properly, the excessive force pressing him against a shipping container, the mocking insinuations. His voice was steady, but his anger simmered. As he spoke, Rourke looked close to tears, and Donovan's face hardened into an expression of humiliated resentment. By the end of the session, Investigator Benson's tone was grave. "We'll be gathering any bodycam footage, dashcam audio, and verifying the chain of events. Both of you are on immediate administrative leave, pending further review." Silence filled the briefing room. Donovan opened his mouth as if to protest, but Redmond shot him a glare that could cut steel. The firestorm had begun, and their fate now hinged on a formal process that rarely took kindly to racist or abusive policing. Meanwhile, across the city, Cole's phone buzzed. Local media had gotten wind that something major was unfolding involving the new chief. A reckoning was coming, not just for Donovan and Rourke, but for a department in dire need of a cultural overhaul. Word traveled at lightning speed. By dawn, talk radio stations buzzed with rumors of two officers roughing up the new police chief. Social media trended hashtags like #PhillyChiefIncident, and reporters staked out the precinct. The Philadelphia Inquirer published a breaking news alert: Chief Xavier Cole detained by his own officers' department in turmoil. In City Hall, Mayor Deirdre Hoffman convened an emergency press conference. It was a surreal sight. The mayor, standing at a podium outside the historic building, fielding questions from a sea of microphones. "We have confirmed that Chief Cole was indeed wrongly detained by two officers," she said, her voice taut. "An internal investigation is underway, and we will not tolerate any form of misconduct or racial profiling in our police department. Period." Inside the main precinct headquarters, Cole observed the live broadcast on a monitor in his temporary office. His wrist ached from where the cuffs had chafed, and a bruise on his shoulder reminded him of Donovan's force. Yet the emotional turmoil weighed even more. Every headline, every mention on TV, reinforced the shocking nature of what had happened. No chief wants to make news this way. Deputy Commissioner Redmond knocked softly, stepping in. "Chief, the mayor's office wants to coordinate your own statement for the press. They're eager to show a unified front." Cole turned off the monitor. "Understood. I'll do it." "The public is outraged, and rightfully so. We need to address it head-on." Redmond hesitated, then asked gently, "How are you holding up?" Cole ran a hand over his short hair, angry, saddened, but also determined. He locked eyes with her. "This can be a catalyst. If I'd just read about an incident like this, it would be one more item in a long list of concerns. But now that I've experienced it, got thrown against a wall in my own city, I feel it in my bones. We have to root out this culture." Redmond nodded, sympathetic. "Our next steps, IA is already collecting statements. We'll convene a disciplinary hearing." The video from Donovan's body cam is apparently partial. Some footage might have been cut or turned off. That's suspicious. But the dash cam from their cruiser is intact. Cole's frustration spiked. "Of course. Typical. Well, we'll push for transparency. Because it's not just about me. This is about every person they've harassed." Redmond offered a faint smile. "I'll handle the logistics. In the meantime, rest if you can. You've barely slept." Cole chuckled darkly. "Rest? I have a press conference to plan, citizens to reassure, and a department that needs transformation. I can rest when we've made real progress." She gave his shoulder a gentle pat and exited, leaving Cole alone in the hush of his office. He glanced at a framed motto on the wall: "To protect and serve with honor." The words stung with fresh meaning. "We're far from living up to that," he thought grimly. But maybe this scandal, as painful as it was, could serve as the impetus for genuine change. Later that afternoon, City Hall's main steps teemed with reporters, camera crews, and onlookers. The scorching Philadelphia sun glinted off the marble columns. People craned their necks to catch a glimpse of the man at the center of the controversy. Chief Xavier Cole stepped to the microphone, flanked by Mayor Hoffman and Deputy Commissioner Redmond. The hush that fell was almost palpable. Cameras clicked in rapid bursts, capturing his calm but resolute expression. He wore a navy suit, the bruise on his temple discreetly covered with makeup, but nothing could hide the tension in his posture. Clearing his throat, Cole began, "Good afternoon. As many of you have heard, I experienced an unlawful detention by two of our own officers last night. Their actions were unacceptable. They applied force without cause, and its apparent racial bias played a role. A ripple of murmurs and camera flashes swept through the crowd." Cole continued, voice firm, "I'm not here to single out these individuals alone. The truth is, Incidents of bias and misconduct have been festering within law enforcement for too long here in Philadelphia and beyond. We owe it to every resident, especially those in marginalized communities, to enforce zero tolerance for racism or abuse of power. Mayor Hoffman stepped forward, nodding. We support the chief wholeheartedly. There will be a thorough investigation, and if warranted, those officers will face disciplinary action or criminal charges. We are committed to reform at every level of the department. A reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer raised a hand. Chief Cole, do you believe this incident reveals deeper, systemic issues in the Philly PD? Cole gazed back unflinchingly. I do. I also believe we have many dedicated officers who serve with integrity. But the presence of even a few who abuse their authority can poison public trust. We must address it systematically through improved training, stronger accountability measures, and cultural change from within. Another reporter shouted a question about whether Cole felt personally targeted as a black man. Cole paused, then spoke with measured candor. Had I been a white man in a suit, I doubt those officers would have pinned me against a container without hearing me out. This can't continue to be the norm for anyone. As cameras flashed again, a small cheer rose from a group of community activists standing nearby. They held signs reading "Justice for all and end police racism." For a moment, Cole allowed himself to hope that public sentiment might pressure the department to truly reform. After the brief Q&A, the mayor closed the press conference. Cole stepped down, greeted by a flurry of supporters and a wave of further questions. Though exhausted, he felt a surge of resolve. Let them see, he thought. Let the city witness this wrong. We'll make it right or die trying. His phone buzzed with calls from national media outlets, big names like CNN and MSNBC wanting interviews. The story had become a sensation, police chief victimized by own force. Cole understood the potential for sensationalism, but also the opportunity the national spotlight might spur the kind of structural changes he'd always dreamed of. In the days following the press conference, the Philadelphia Police Department was in disarray. Rumors swirled in locker rooms and hallways. Some officers were appalled by Donovan and Rourke's actions, fearing the damage to the department's credibility. Others, however, whispered that Cole was grandstanding or that he'd lured the officers into a trap, claiming it was part of a personal agenda. Cole tried to ignore the gossip. His focus was on the formal internal affairs process. Investigators had confiscated Donovan's and Rourke's body cams, collecting statements from potential witnesses. They even tracked down a dock worker who'd seen the scuffle from afar and overheard Donovan's threatening tone. The evidence piled up like bricks in a damning wall. Meanwhile, an unexpected ally stepped forward, Officer Rourke himself. Torn by guilt, he requested a private meeting with Cole through IA. In a small, sterile conference room, Rourke arrived in civilian clothes, eyes puffy with exhaustion. "Chief," he began softly, "I just want to say I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix what happened." Cole studied him. Rourke looked genuinely remorseful, not the same cocky figure who'd first cuffed him at the docks. "You're aware this is being recorded?" Cole said, motioning to the camera in the corner. Rourke nodded. "I understand. I'm prepared to cooperate fully." Donovan's temper got the best of us, but I share blame. I followed his lead, and I should have questioned it earlier. Cole's voice was steady. "You realize the investigation might recommend your suspension or worse." Rourke swallowed. "Yes, but I can't keep silent. I've seen Donovan harass people who looked like they didn't belong." He'd laugh about it afterward. "I tried to stay out of it, or just tone it down, but that was cowardly. When I realized you might be the chief, I wanted to do the right thing, but..." He paused, tears threatening. "I was afraid he'd turn on me or that I'd lose my job." Cole sighed. This is exactly the culture we need to change. When good cops stay silent in the face of wrongdoing, it festers. Rourke nodded, wiping his eye. I'm willing to testify to everything. If it helps clean up the department, that's what I want. They spoke for nearly an hour, with IA investigators noting every detail. Rourke recounted how Donovan bragged about being tough on punks, how he believed no one would question him if he roughed up a suspect, especially if they were black. Rourke admitted he'd never reported it because Donovan was well connected in certain circles. By the end, Cole felt a surprising sense of relief. It wouldn't erase the trauma of that night, but Rourke's testimony was a step toward accountability. If more officers overcame fear and spoke up, the department might truly shed its toxic elements. A sliver of hope pierced the gloom. Internal affairs moved swiftly, eager to show the city that the department wasn't playing favorites. Within 2 weeks, a disciplinary hearing was convened. The board consisted of senior officers, representatives from the Civilian Oversight Committee, and an assistant city solicitor. Donovan and Rourke were summoned to face formal charges of misconduct, harassment, and racial profiling. Word had it the district attorney was also reviewing the case for possible criminal charges. Given the clear abuse of power, Cole didn't preside over the hearing. He recused himself, which was standard procedure when the complainant was the chief. However, he did testify, recounting how Donovan pinned him against a container, ignoring repeated attempts at peaceful resolution. Rourke testified as well, providing damning details about Donovan's history of harassing citizens. The dashcam audio sealed Donovan's fate. It captured him uttering racial epithets under his breath, along with statements like, "This guy's going down no matter what." In the hearing room, Donovan tried to defend himself, muttering about confusion and self-defense, but the evidence was overwhelming. His face reddened with anger and shame as board members grilled him. Rourke's testimony, along with the recovered dashcam footage, contradicted every lie Donovan attempted. A hush fell when the board announced its decision. Donovan was to be terminated immediately. His final paycheck withheld pending a civil lawsuit the city might face. Rourke, for cooperating, received a lesser punishment, 6-month suspension without pay, mandatory retraining, and strict oversight if he returned to duty. He accepted it without complaint, acknowledging that he deserved consequences. Outside the hearing, reporters snapped photos of Donovan trudging down the steps, his former badge in a plastic evidence bag. The once cocky officer shielded his face from cameras, muttering curses. On social media, clips of him being fired went viral, fueling further debate about policing in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, the district attorney's office announced a parallel investigation for potential criminal charges. They might charge Donovan with assault, false imprisonment, and civil rights violations. The hard karma that many in the community demanded was well on its way. When Cole got the news, he felt a mixture of vindication and sorrow. This was a necessary outcome. No one who abused citizens deserved to wear a badge. Yet it was also a stark reminder of how a single night's meltdown could unravel careers and rattle an entire department. Returning to his office, Cole found a stack of letters on his desk, some from citizens offering support, some from community leaders calling for deeper reforms. He also saw one from a law firm representing Donovan, hinting at a wrongful termination suit. Cole exhaled slowly. So it begins, he thought, but we're not backing down. He'd stand by the decision, stand by the truth. If Donovan wanted a court battle, the city was prepared. The real test would be whether the police union and other resistant factions tried to circle the wagons. But as far as Cole was concerned, Philadelphia was done turning a blind eye. This was the turning point he'd promised, painful, but absolutely necessary. As the weeks turned into months, the ripple effects of Cole's ordeal continued to shape the Philadelphia Police Department. Internal Affairs received a surge of new complaints from citizens, emboldened by Donovan's downfall. Some were older cases, long buried out of fear. Others were fresh grievances, but each one was finally investigated with the seriousness it deserved. Cole spearheaded departmental reforms with renewed vigor. He brought in external experts, retired judges, civil rights activists, and even academics from Temple University's Criminal Justice Department to advise on procedural changes. Bodycam protocols were tightened, ensuring that cameras remained on during all civilian interactions, with stiff penalties for any officer who disabled them without just cause. Training sessions emphasized de-escalation, community engagement, and cultural competency. Skeptics rolled their eyes at first, but gradually the atmosphere began to shift. In West Philadelphia, community members who once refused to speak at coffee with a cop events started showing up. They tested the waters, cautiously hopeful that maybe, under Cole's leadership, their voices would be heard. Local pastors and youth organizers became partners rather than adversaries. The transformation wasn't instantaneous. Decades of mistrust don't vanish overnight, but at least the door was open. Mayor Hoffman championed Cole's efforts at every turn, praising him publicly and securing additional funding for pilot programs aimed at bridging the gap between police and neighborhoods. The Philadelphia Inquirer ran an in-depth piece titled "From Victim to Visionary: How Chief Cole is Changing Policing After His Own Arrest." The article revealed the chief's personal struggles too, how he found it difficult to sleep for a time, haunted by the memory of being slammed against the container. Yet he refused to let that incident define him as a victim. He turned it into fuel for justice. Meanwhile, Donovan faced a harsh reality. The district attorney indicted him on multiple counts, including assault and abuse of authority. Legal experts predicted a likely plea deal. His once friendly colleagues distanced themselves, unwilling to defend his blatant racism. Rourke, on the other hand, used his suspension to reflect deeply, volunteering in community programs to repair some measure of trust. Whether the force would fully accept him back remained uncertain, but at least he was making an effort to atone. On a crisp autumn morning, Cole stood atop the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, those iconic rocky steps looking out over the city. The skyline shimmered under a bright sun. He'd come here to clear his mind before a meeting with civil rights leaders. As he surveyed the birthplace of American ideals, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. "This is just the start," he whispered, the wind rustling his jacket. "We have a long way to go, but we'll get there together." He was not naive. Obstacles remained, from entrenched bias to administrative inertia. Yet Philadelphia was waking up to the necessity of real change, spurred by the shocking saga of a chief almost undone by his own department's prejudice. And in that awakening, Cole found the seeds of a legacy he'd gladly devote his life to nurturing, a police force that truly served and protected, one that recognized the worth of every Philadelphian, no matter their rank or the color of their skin. A single night in a forgotten corner of the city exposed the heart of a systemic problem, one that had simmered beneath the surface for too long. For Chief Xavier Cole, being mistaken and manhandled by his own officers was a searing personal humiliation. Yet it became a catalyst for transformation, shining a glaring spotlight on the toxic roots of racism within the force. Donovan and Rourke faced swift consequences, and the department was forced to confront its failures head-on. Philadelphia's citizens witnessed not just the downfall of rogue officers, but the dawning of a new commitment to fairness and accountability. From broken trust emerged the beginnings of healing. Thank you for following this powerful story. If you believe in holding power to account and making our communities safer for everyone, please like this video, share it widely, and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can foster understanding, champion reform, and ensure that justice truly prevails.